I'm
All
ready.
right.
I'm excited. It's so nice to see your beautiful faces, and for everyone in attendance, welcome. So we are very excited to welcome you to another Rhone Rangers virtual experience. We hope you are all safe and well. Things continue to be uncertain. We are sending you much love. Drink well. You're doing all the right things. My name's Maggie Tillman. I'm with Alta Colina here in Paso Robles, California. And I'm really excited to get to introduce our moderator today, Philippe André, who I'm going to read his bio, which I was going to go through and just find some fun tidbits, but it's all fun. I'm just going to read it in its entirety. But I actually connected with Philippe over Instagram, and I highly recommend for anyone on Instagram, throw him a follow. He is a great combination of both fun and educational and incredibly knowledgeable. So his Instagram handle is Niquesomm. It's Niquesomm, and he is a delight. So the official bio. So Philippe, as a second-generation sommelier and restaurateur from Chicago, Philippe André has been on the cutting edge of wine and cuisine for 15 years. He developed a passion for hospitality, wine education, and champagne early on. Before his U.S. ambassador role with Charles Heidsieck, which that is a champagne house everyone must know, Philippe focused on wine auction curation, luxury wines and spirits brand development, and private client management. In addition to his champagne travels, Philippe serves on the board of the United Sommeliers Foundation in the support and development of future somms. So we are going to be talking about sparkling today. And Philippe, I'm going to let you take it away to introduce the panel. And we'll keep an eye on the chat to make sure that everybody's questions get answered. And cheers. Welcome, everyone. Philippe, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Maggie. Thanks, everyone, for logging on and chatting bubbles with us today. I'm Philippe André, and I've got the Rhone Rangers for you guys tonight. And we're tasting some really cool bubbles from all around the country. So as we mentioned earlier that we're focusing on some unique wines that I've actually never tasted before. So I'm going to taste through with everybody. And first up is Sterling with Cask. Tell us a little bit about your property. Tell me about your wine and what we got going on here tonight, man. Welcome to the party.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So yeah, a little background on Cass. Also in Paso Robles on the east side of Paso in the Geneseo district. Have a 145 acres planted, and that's actually split between Rhones and Bordeaux. But we sell most of that, mainly being the Bordeaux. So I mainly make a bunch of different Rhone varietals, and only doing about 12,000 cases. Of that, the sparkling is just something that I play around with. We only really make it for our club members to send out during the holidays, and then just to have around for, popping bottles. So every couple of years, I kind of change the variety on it. I've done Sparkling Marsanne before, Grenache as a Blanc de Noir, and this time Viognier. So with the map that you have up right now, it's block 14. It's that one little strip. It was only 0.9 acres. We grafted over a couple years ago, and that's part of the reason I did the Viognier is kind of coming off the second leaf. I knew it'd be a little lower yield and higher acidity, and figured it'd be perfect for sparkling. And yeah, what's kind of fun about this Viognier is it's very low sugar, but with the Viognier being so fruity and a little higher pH, it almost kind of, you don't need the sweetness. So you have the perception of sweetness and the fruitiness, but without the actual sugar level, which is something I kind of like, and probably definitely a newer, a new world, definitely new California type of sparkling.
Yeah, no, this wine has incredible texture to it. How long was it on the lees, and what's maybe you can explain to some folks that have never had sparkling wine before, what is the process that you guys are doing to make the bubbles?
Sure, of course. So I make this still wine, Viognier, pick it early so it's lower alcohol, higher acidity to give it some nice crispness. And then once it was the still wine, we did the triage, so in bottle. It is a traditional method champenois. And this case, it was only about 10 months. With that, I've done longer, but with the Viognier being so expressive on the nose and so fruity, I kind of wanted to preserve that. So
Yeah.
instead of having it longer on the lees and giving more of that traditional champagne yeasty quality, I kind of preserve the fruitiness, and you definitely get that with the bubbles coming through. Very aromatic. So that 10-month on the lees, and then yeah, it got disgorged, and we actually just released this about 2 months ago. So it's still pretty new and still coming around.
Okay, and I can taste the love in here. So what is the production size of this wine?
225 cases.
Okay, I think that's really important to state because you know, we love to showcase wines to everyone, but obviously this is something that comes from the heart, and I see that here and everything that's in front of me. What's it like to make 225 cases of sparkling wine that, you know, maybe a larger producer doesn't have to worry about for you guys?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah. What are you doing that a larger producer, you know, doesn't have to worry about that you do because it's such a smaller production? You know, anything by hand in terms of, you know, disgorgement, you're bringing someone in to help you with that, or you outsourcing it?
For the actual disgorgement and the method, I actually take it over the hill to another winery called Winery
Okay.
right here in Paso. They have the machinery and kind of do that for us. I do all this still wine. But I think one thing that's going to be a lot of different than compared to the big guys, and even tasting through a couple others that we have here, is you can do something fun and do uniqueness.
Yep.
I decided to do the Viognier. I was in Stellenbosch, South Africa, and had a Sparkling Viognier there. And I turned to my wife and said, "I'm going to make this." And I came back the next year and made it. At the time, I'd never had a Sparkling Viognier. I didn't find out till later that Sherman actually had made one. And so it was just something fun. I mean, why not? So, like I said, I've done a Grenache Sparkling Marsanne, which I've never had before. This year, I'm doing a Sparkling Rosé that is primarily more Vedra. So it's uniqueness and that love that you talked about that we just can do because we want to.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. I think it's vitally correct in terms of like this smells and tastes like Viognier, but I've never had personally a Sparkling Viognier before. So when I saw the lineup, I was like, I get two. This is really cool. And I love how charming and really pretty this wine is at the same time. It's got some weight and power at the same time, you know, it just dances across the palate, and it is so aromatic. And I love putting bubbles in big glasses because for me, size matters. So I love getting my schnoz in there and smelling everything. So well done. Very, very cool project. Really, really cool experience. All right. Sterling, you're off the hook. Who's on the hot seat next? I think is Kevin, my man. How you doing?
Yeah, so we have our 2016 Libelle. So let me see if I can. I don't know if I can. No, if that. Can you see that up there? I don't know. I can't see myself right now, but.
Oh yeah.
My name is Kevin. I'm the winemaker at Halter Ranch. Halter Ranch, if you're not familiar with it, is located on the west side of Paso Robles. Basically, there's a nice view of our map right there. If you look down on the bottom left of our wine grape variety map there, just to the left of us is Talbot Creek. Just up the road is Justin Winery, is another namesake in the area. We get a little bit similar to Cass, are planted to quite a few different grape varieties, predominantly Bordeaux and Rhone. But our history in the Rhone category, stems off of our neighbors, which is basically Talbot Creek. And as many of especially if you're a Rhone aficionados, that when they first started their project over there, they brought in a lot of grape varieties from France and had them in quarantine. And one of the ones that showed up during that time frame was Picpoul Blanc. And our previous vineyard manager, who sourced a lot of the grapes to plant Halter Ranch with, which initially was set up to be kind of a grape growing property to supply people like Sherman or whoever might be interested in buying some grapes. And so there was a lot of small blocks planted, and one of the things that they did was they implemented some Picpoul Blanc along with Tannat and lots of cool other stuff that came out of the Talbot Creek nursery. Predominantly with our whites, we focus on Grenache Blanc, but when I moved over here from working at my previous job in 2011, me with my German roots, sparkling has always been a a big part of our life. A lot of people probably don't realize that in Germany, they drink way more sparkling than anybody else in the world. And they make a lot too. They just don't know that because they drink it all themselves. My mom and my dad are German, and they pound it. Like, that's all they drink is generally sparkling. That's what they go to. So I grew up a little bit on that. And, you know, my first thought when I arrived here was like, look, we need to do a sparkling of some sort. And, you know, I was lucky enough to adopt and inherit a grape variety that is really, I think, underutilized and undervalued in the Rhone category, which is Picpoul Blanc. And for those of you, I think most of you probably know this, but it translates into lip stinger in French. And so it has, you know, a clear path for us. It was like, well, what are we going to choose? It's like, well, let's try Picpoul Blanc. So we actually started this project in 2011, and ironically, we made a still wine for it and got it ready to go through the process. And we searched out to quite a few people who are friends of ours in the business. Most of them were up north, but Christian Rogueneau, who was, you know, down south in the Edna Valley for a long time, and a friend of mine, Pauline Lote, who's up at Shandon. She's the senior winemaker up there. And we made the still wine, and we actually went through the process of sending that still wine out to them, both to taste and for analysis. Christian actually came up and talked to us. And we said, look, the most important thing for us is, if we're going to make a program out of this, is to make sure we have the guts to make this right. You know, if we're going to do this, it's a serious investment, as everybody who makes things knows, when it comes to the entourage time and the new label and all these things that go along with it, because it's not an easy process and not an easy one to learn. And so ultimately, you know, everybody said, yeah, this is fascinating and interesting. So we approached our owner, and he actually shot us down the first year, because it was my first year, you know, making wine. He said, look, you got enough to worry about with a brand new facility. But 5 years later, he said, hey, what about that sparkling thing? Things are going well. Let's rethink that. So we started it in 2015 with the first vintage, and it was very interesting when it went on Triage. For those of you who aren't familiar with that process, essentially we make the still wine like Sterling said, and then from there, to get the bubbles, you add a little bit of sugar and yeast into that bottle, and you crown cap it, and you essentially, you know, let it ferment in there. But the secondary part of that is the yeast autolysis that happens in that bottle over an extended period of time. It's very similar to aging wine on lees and with whites. The difference is you can't really stir them. You just kind of set them aside and you let that go. And, you know, with Picpoul Blanc, our pHs are literally like, you know, 3.05. In fact, the vintage that we had here was actually in the high 2s. And so we actually had to leave it on Triage, because that yeast autolysis, what it does is it softens the wine and gives it a little of that brioche and bready kind of character that comes with it. And we had to wait 30 months for it to soften enough to get it where we're at. And still, I think it really identifies with Picpoul Blanc. I mean, to me, it's got a lot of Picpoul Blanc character. It's got acidity, it's racy, and you know, you have a little hint of that brioche character, but it's really more about the variety. And that's what we wanted to do. You know, we didn't do a heavy dosage on it. We went with a small percentage of sugar to add back, because we didn't want it to be so creamy and sweet that appealed to the masses. It's only 350 cases, and we knew that our wine club would eat it up. And the first vintage went by fast, and now we're on to the 16, which is what you're tasting here. So just a really fun project. Again, 350 cases. We make about 25 to 30,000 cases depending on the vintage. So for us, really just a project and something fun and interesting. If you take a look at the label, Libelle actually means dragonfly in German. And our owner's father had done some artwork for his wife, and he was heavy into the Libelle, the dragonfly art sculpture. And so that's kind of where this come from. It's a Swiss paper cut, which is kind of really cool looking, and it has all the different things that come on our property. It's got our ancestor tree, the largest coast live oak, our bridge. And then in the bottom, what is that, right corner over here, there's a tiny little dragonfly, the only dragonfly on the property or on the label. And yeah, you can see that on Philippe's one right there, right in that bottom right-hand corner. And so that's where all this came from. But as I mentioned, there was so much that went into it, the artwork, the paper cut, all this stuff, that we wanted to be serious about it. And you know, it's a serious program. We've got 18 that's in riddling rack, and we have 2020 that's in tank that will get swapped out. So basically we make it every other year, because it is a lengthy process and a lot of work. So I hope you enjoy it.
So yeah, before I dive into what I'm tasting and experiencing, what's it like to tell the boss that, oh, this wine's going to need another year to be released? You know, that's a different conversation than any other wine that you're making. I mean, did you have to say that, or did you pass that off to somebody else?
No, it is me.
That wasn't an email, right? That was a phone call, or was it a person to person?
Yeah, you kind of slide that one by when he says, can't wait for that sparkling on New Year's this year. You go, yeah. Not this year. And then he's like, oh, and then he's like, not next year either. It's really going to be more like 2 years before you finally get it. But, you know, he understands. Our owner here has been interesting. He's definitely went after the production side first. All these caves that you see behind me, as well as our production facility, was all built before our tasting room was out here. So he prioritized the winemaking process before he worried about the selling process, which is, you know, a little different than I think a lot of owners would be. But yeah, he gets it. He has plenty of wine to drink behind me, right? So he can wait. He can wait a little longer.
Well, I think what it shows is that in order to make something like this, and obviously what we're all tasting is here, it takes a lot of crazy people to get it done. And it really helps to have the craziness, you know, all around you. So I'm so excited to be here and to share this with you, Kevin. So, you know, this wine for me is so different again, something that I've never had before. I find this interesting, purity to it. And then the racing acidity is there. I feel like this wine could age incredibly. After you disgorge it, I think this is like I want to forget about this for 5 or 6 years and come back to it. Are you guys holding on to a few bottles? Or
yeah, we have a library for sure, and I think that really goes for a lot of sparklings, especially ones that do have this much acidity. I mean, it's going to hang on for a long time. You can set it down; it's going to evolve. There's going to be some oxidation, but it's going to be really, really limited because you're in a pressurized vessel. You know, being a sparkling bottle. So you don't really have any issues from that standpoint. And, you know, that's the great part about it. I mean, you can overmake sparkling by whatever, 200, 300, 400 cases when you're our size, you know, that's a lot if you overmake it, and everybody here, but, you know, you can put it away and it still lasts forever. And to pull out a bottle from, you know, 2015 is exciting, but it's deceiving in some point because we literally bottled this, you know, a year and a half ago, and it's the 16 vintage. You know, and we're going to be bottling the 18 vintage next year. So it just seems like it's been around forever, but it's actually just been sitting in those bottles, just going through yeast autolysis. And, you know, but that's the beauty of winemaking. It's, as we always say in this business, it's you know, an aircraft carrier. It takes 2 miles to turn around. Like things don't happen like that, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that awesome wine.
I had one question that I wanted to jump in with. Kevin, when you were mentioning your pHs, all of the winemakers on the panel grinned. And just for context, can you let folks know who are watching, is that high, low, just a little more info about why everyone?
Yeah, so when you talk about the scale of pH, you talk about basically, you know, 1 being the most acidic and then 14 being the most basic, and then 7 is basically being neutral. Generally speaking, wine, you know, if you're talking about whites, can be anywhere from a pH of like, you know, I'm talking about still whites, you know, 3.2, 3.3, and reds can range all the way up to 4 on the pH scale. Sparkling will usually be a little bit more acidic than that, meaning, you know, veering towards the lower 3 category. But to be in the 2 is really abnormal for wine. But, you know, we wanted to make sure that we didn't end up with a wine that was high in alcohol, because remember, as making sparkling here, you know, you don't want to be in the, I mean, at least personally, don't want to be in the 13, 14%. You want to be in the, you know, 11, 12, maybe the, you know, low 13s, because, you know, that's a wine that has a lot of acidity and it can really show a lot of alcohol to it. So everybody has a tendency to pick at lower sugar levels, which means your acid's also low. So remember, as a grape ripens, sugar goes up, acid goes down. So you got to pick, instead of picking like this, when you're making still wine, you got to pick more like this, which means you're going to have lower sugar and higher acid. So being in the high 2s as a pH, you know, unprecedented. But also, you know, getting back to what Philippe said, you know, when we started on this project, I mean, as far as I know, and as far as I've talked to which I'm glad to hear from Philippe that he's never had this before, because I don't know of anybody anywhere that's making a Picpoul Blanc sparkling. And so we're hoping that, I think Anthony might have one down the road on a smaller scale. I don't know if it's bottled, you know, in vast quantities, or he might be more like 25 or 50 cases. But as far as I know, I don't really know anybody else who's doing a Picpoul sparkling. So I believe it's one of a kind. And, you know, hopefully we'll set the trend for other people to do it, because it really is a great grape variety for our area, because it has so much acid.
If I may touch on it. So I had kind of mentioned it before, but just to compare it to what Kevin was saying with his high 2 pH, this Viognier was a 3.55. Even though it's only 12% alcohol, the nature of our soils, I tend to get higher pHs. So that's when I kind of mentioned with the sugars, I didn't need that much sugar in the dosage after, because it already had this kind of creamy feel. So it really comes down to the balance where, so I didn't necessarily need that, where, you know, Kevin needed the time and, you know, some sugar to balance out that really high acidity that he had with the lower pH.
But your wine is so floral, man. It is like, dude, it's so decadent on the nose. So I appreciate that. By the way, anyone watching, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Maggie's on it, and we'll get to them when we can. But next up is Shannon, calling in all the way from the VA. How you doing, Shannon?
Hi.
Welcome.
So Horton's is located in Virginia, and on the East Coast. And so we, yeah, there we are, well, Virginia. So we've been making sparkling Viognier since the mid 1990s. We have about 67 acres under vine for our whole vineyard, and 20 acres of that is Viognier. We do a still and we do a sparkling with it. And we use the open lyre system that's evident in that picture, so that you can, that way we get photosynthesis from all sides, and we're able to get, my mother gets, she does the vineyard. We get about 10 to 12 tons an acre when she harvests. So mass production. So that was the reason we even started doing a sparkling, was because my father didn't want to get rid of a whole bunch of crop to let the rest of the crop ripen correctly. So the chemistries and the pH were perfect. The sugars and it was perfect to make sparkling. And that's why he started doing it in the mid 90s. Sparkling program at Horton was one of the first things that I took over down in the cellar. So I've always had a love for sparkling and a huge passion for sparkling. And so I thought it was like the coolest thing. But our process, we do the method champenois, where the second fermentation is in the bottle. But we do all by hand. We do hand riddling. We do hand disgorgement. Each bottle is, there's some is poured out into a glass for taste, color, and smell and aromas. So if it doesn't make the cut, then it gets poured out. We lose about 10% every time we disgorge. And we only do 100 cases at a time. So I only get about 90 to 95. And I don't do any dosage. So it's a huge acid bomb. It's like palate cleansing, bone dry. I was just aiming to make a white sparkling that went with a prime rib. I wanted something to cut through the fat. And the acid that's in this Viognier does that. And it has this huge green apple flavors to it. This one has been on the lees for quite a bit. It was put on the lees.
Yeah.
2016, and then we just disgorged it during the pandemic, March of 2020. So, and we still have more of that 2016, and that's what we just tap into. And then this March, we put down another 11,000 bottles. We're almost finished with that 2016, and I had to pour down to be able to have enough surplus. Eventually, I want to get something that's been on the lease for 10 years.
Okay.
So.
All right. I love it. So, and do you have anything currently that's close to that you're like still checking in on?
Yes. So yeah, we still have some that I that was from a 2014, and then I just keep to check for oxidation. I check
every Friday, just to check in on it.
Every Friday.
I love it. Yeah, you know, those are some of the greatest examples of you know, some of the fruits of our labors in the industry, is that we get a chance to check in and revisit. You learn a lot, obviously, about what you did and what you should have did, but when you see the end result, you know, you understand why you put this time and dedication into it. Very cool. Do you have any older bottles that have been disgorged that you guys have saved?
So I have some from like 1999 that when my first dancing around with a no dosage, because this one is now a no, that we finally got, he kept toying with that idea, but never came to fruition with it. And so I've got some of those experiments down in our wine cellar here. So yeah.
That's a great point. I think dosage is something that, you know, the bubble industry is really talking about right now. And you know, there's a lot of different viewpoints on where dosage should be, and I think mine is the wine complete? You know, does it need anything more or not? Then that's your decision. And I think what's really so cool is that you guys have a property that has, you know, ripe fruit that doesn't need anything else. And because of the time and effort you're putting into it, it is a complete wine. And like you said, I'd love to have this with a steak. I think that's something really cool to do. A lot of people have never had bubbles with a steak or red meat. Why, you know, that juxtaposition is so cool to play around with. And I could see some spice with this too. You know, as we were talking about, these wines have great decadence and character to them that they could play all well with some spicy food, a nice good taco maybe, or two. Yeah. So and how many different sparklings do you guys make? Do you make just one, Shannon?
We actually have three. So we do a rosé, which is Triga Nacional, a Portuguese grape.
Yep.
And I red sparkling, that's Tannat. So
yeah, you've got your hands full with the bubbles for sure. Any large formats do you guys make?
Yep. So I put down Jerry bombs. I put down 6 of them. So we'll see what the heck happens with that.
And you're gonna leave them on leaves for a while? Is that the plan? Just like that? Very cool. Very cool. So and I love the texture on this. I think texture is something that we often find is a direct relation to time on leaves or the triage time. How much is it the varietal? How much is it a time on leaves for you that you feel like the texture comes into play?
So I think with this batch, it was definitely time on leaves, because the stuff that we had disgorged, 2 years ago, which was from the same batch, wasn't as complex. It was much more simple, didn't have as much texture, kind of like it was a one-note wonder. But now the complexity has built based on what was made from that batch, and it's gotten a lot better. There's a lot more nuances to it. There's a lot of stuff going on in the mid palate that was not there before. But when we made our next batch, our 2019, when we put those 11,000 bottles down, I did a little skin contact with the Viognier that time, even though it was early pick. Did a little crush it, just a little bit to blend in with it. Most of it was pressed like the traditional way, where you increase the pressure. Sparkling for that
bladder press,
right? And also had like some parts of it, that some of the harvest that had actually been crushed and then just had some skin contact, and I put those two together to give it a bigger mid palate, so that we could get it to get it out a little bit quicker. I just wanted to see what would happen.
You're cooking in the kitchen. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, you do a little this, a little that, and next thing you know, you got your special sauce that comes together. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Shannon. And got to come out and visit. So I spent a little time in Fairfax at George. How far are you guys from Fairfax? I know it's crazy far, but just for folks to understand.
Fairfax is like hour and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, get in the car and come. It's not a big deal.
Got it. Okay, good to know. Now I know. Awesome. Okay, well, Here we go. Sherman, are you ready to taste some wine?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay.
So this project for us kind of came about in 13. I was a little bit behind on white wine sales. I was already contracted to this block and just kind of was mulling around trying to figure out what else we could do, with this fruit that was coming in. We still had plenty of 12 to sell in the tasting room. So I guess, decided to go ahead and pick it early and make a sparkling out of it. So I called my buddy, who I've known for quite a while up in Santa Cruz, he has a winery called Equinox, and he's done all the Triage bottling for me and whatnot. But he kind of gave me some numbers to hit for the pick. So we picked it, I guess, at 3.19 and a TA of 0.9. So pretty tart. Basically, I made the still wine, just, kind of like Kevin and Sterling. And then, that's the vineyard right there. It's kind of terraced. And the property goes right up next to Halter. So they share a property line with Halter Ranch, somewhere in the back there. But I did the still wine up in 2013, and then in 14, about April or May, took it up to Santa Cruz in a big 550 gallon tank, and my buddy Barry did the Triage bottling, and basically he filters it, and then takes a portion of that, grows up a yeast culture over 3 to 5 days. Then he adds the yeast back to the main still lot. And then the next day he adds basically the champagne sugar and stirs it and bottles that same day. And he keeps stirring the tank while he's bottling, just to make sure everything's kind of incorporated. He doesn't want the fermentation to go too crazy in the tank. So right away they're bottled. And basically from there, it ferments for anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks, depending on kind of cellar temperature. And then he told me about from 16 to 18 weeks, somewhere in that time frame, is when the yeast actually dies. And at that point, kind of after that point, you can go ahead and disgorge. You're not going to go right back into any kind of active fermentation if you do add a dosage. So what we did was our first, basically we made about 225, 250 cases total, but we didn't disgorge it all at the same time. So we took a sample of stuff after about 2 years, and my buddy Barry from Equinox sent us down samples with different dosages in it, and we did a blind tasting. And we kind of found that first year that a very small amount of sugar was kind of necessary. The wine was a little linear without any dosage. And so the sugar helped kind of build out the palate and just kind of fatten it up to a point where we were looking for, but there was no sweetness, detectable sweetness, but the sugar was enough just to kind of broaden the palate. After that year, we did 2 more disgorgements. We found that the added aging, built enough complexity into the palate and broadened it out that we didn't need any dosage. So we went without a dosage on the second 2, which is what we're tasting today, is the third, and a total of 6 years. So you can tell that it's got some age on it. It's got some of that kind of nutty character, and a lot of the expression you get from it sitting on its yeast. We disgorged this the middle of last year, so it's still 2013 vintage, but we basically made 3 different wines out of it by disgorging it at different times. So,
and is there another vintage that's coming later, or this was
so last year we or 2000 was it 19? I guess 2019 we set some aside, and that is actually, luckily it's up in his place, so it's not bottlenecking our building behind us. But I got to go back. He was able to get that Triage bottle right before harvest this year. And so we do have a future one, but we did take a big break, in between vintages, just, it's kind of a specialty thing. We don't pour it in the tasting room because the problem with sparkling is if you crack it, it's
wait, there's no problems with sparkling. Come on, there's no problems. Don't forget, okay?
So
only solutions and only empty glasses.
No. So we pour it on special occasions and whatnot, but it's not something that we pour every day. We make super small amounts. Basically, we've been disgorging it in 75 case lots, and so I like it, and we're happy to have another one kind of in the running, and we'll probably do another first disgorgement in a year or so with that. So.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, I love the character here. It's in a way, it's very inviting, but as you take a sip and you take your second sip, now you're really having this conversation. It's like a little bit slower process as you dive into the palate here. And as you said, that nuttiness is there, but I find this beautiful glossy texture as well. It almost has this, like, not necessarily marzipan, but I get this unique waxiness that I absolutely adore in wines with age, especially. And it is so cool to see it with the bubbly texture as well. I mean, it's just, it's a really pretty wine.
Sherman, we had a question from our guests. They missed the variety that this is made of. I was hoping you could repeat that.
So this is Viognier as well. So we got the trifecta of Viogniers going here, but we started
and very
making
different too.
Viognier in 2007, and this was what we did with actually all of the 2013 vintage from that little block that we get. So
out of curiosity, Sherman, what was the sugar level between your first bottling where you did the dosage to what we're having? You said nothing now, but what did you notice?
We put in 2 grams. So it was, right at kind of the bottom of the spectrum. And we had samples with 2, 4, 6, I think, and then 0. And tasting the 0, just as I said, it was a little linear. 4, maybe it was nudging on a pinch of sweetness, at the very bottom end of the spectrum or whatever. So we just all kind of settled on 2, and it was a blind tasting. And I think 3 out of 4 of us, or 5 out of 6 of us, picked that. And it was kind of a nice surprise when we went to taste it a second time. We did the same lineup, same blind tasting. We just felt that the yeast had really done its job and broadened the palate feel enough to make it big enough to kind of stand on its own without any kind of augmentation. So we didn't even do a test on the third one. We just kind of felt after the second one, just push forward. So, and I think it's full enough, and it's it's great. So
yeah, nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really cool and very appropriate decision. Have you tried some of the older disgorgements next to this and seen how they've aged after disgorgement?
Older disgorgements of
the same bottling. Yeah,
we have all 3 disgorgements. I don't know, Tony, have we done we did do a lineup of all 3. It wasn't quite as it was kind of more of an employee party, so it wasn't quite as
it was a great employee party.
Yeah, I think we just had a good time tasting the different ones.
Was there karaoke involved? Was there a little karaoke,
exactly.
perhaps?
Some table dancing, but
very cool. Yeah, I think it's interesting to try these wines, and obviously your process has showed that a lot of this is very much you're reacting to how the wine obviously tells you as you go forward the method, but it takes so long to find out if you made the right decision. If you had to go back and do it again, Sherman, would you have waited for all of it, or do you feel like it was fun to see each different progression?
It is fun to see it, but I do really appreciate. I kind of like the more nutty flavor of the aged sparklings, and that's just my preference. But man, waiting 7 years to do it every, I don't see it happening. I mean, maybe I should have
the
done one
tax man comes to call in and you're like, oh man, what I
in
gotta
14, but I really do. I mean, you can really taste it in this wine. And I was really happy when we got to this third one and I went, wow, it is really obvious that it's been aged on Triage for a good amount of time. It's there. And it, it just reminded me of a lot of the other extended Triage bottlings that I've tried. So
yeah, it's a cool process. Well, cool. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Maggie, any questions that we need to tap into here?
We do. We've got 2 questions that just came in. The first is from Nate. Thank you, Nate. So this is for everybody. Actually, they're both for everybody. What base wines or water do you all use for your dosage liquid? And have you played around with that at all?
Well, I can start. We went through the whole gamut of dosage options. We went with a little bit of water. We went with cognac. We went with aged Chardonnay. And we went with our straight Picpoul Blanc that came from its own bottle. And ultimately, we chose the Picpoul Blanc, not that we were opposed to any other process or option. I mean, if it tasted the best, that's what we would have went with. But what we ended up doing is we ended up pulling some of the bottles and just pulling the wine out of them and using that to go back. So we absorbed a bit of a loss when it comes to that point, but we were able to keep it, kind of 100% Picpoul Blanc. But when it comes to dosage, just getting back to what Sherman said about 2 grams per liter, just to give you an idea, we were at 6 grams per liter. And I'm sure if you try these wines side by side, you would, probably still think that Sherman's might be a little sweeter than ours, or maybe even Sterling's, just because it's broader and richer. But that's how much sugar we needed to get back, just to get back on track, because it was so acidic. So, the communication that we had with a lot of people is that, don't be afraid to add sugar back to these. And every time you add something, you really should add more, because what you think you got, it could always use, seems like you could use a little more. So even at 6 grams, the people we were communicating with were like, that's really not a lot. A lot of times they'll put in 8, 10, 12 grams per liter of stuff.
Yep.
Even in champagne, it's not, like it's just a California thing. I mean, that's what dosage rates are. But we ended up going with straight Picpoul Blanc to kind of keep it with our theme. But it's a very fascinating process, because all those things do, treat the wine differently. I mean, you're putting cognac in there or water, at those percentages. It's very interesting to see what people do.
I don't know about the price point of adding cognac to it, but I appreciate that. I love that production cost.
Our sparkling's $450, so we were able to afford it.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah, I never tried cognac. I did a kind of side by side with using the still wine. So disgorge a few bottles, use that to dilute, and water, and didn't notice a huge difference. For this, we just basically used the base wine. So disgorged a couple bottles, use that to dilute some of the sugar in there, and just to kind of go with what Kevin was saying. So this one, overall, I believe is either 1.5 grams per liter or 2 grams per liter. So, as he was saying, I think I don't know the numbers totally offhand, but I think for a brut in California, you can go up to 7 or 8 grams per liter. Brut. So on this one, I had changed the back bar label as extra brut, which even then it could be still considered a natural.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think we're seeing a revolution in the Champagne region in terms of, I think it was just a direct reflective of global warming, frankly, as these wines don't need the finishing dosage that they used to. Obviously, we could also argue that the winemakers themselves and the consumers are asking for something drier, but I think ultimately the dosage portion is really the finishing touch, and to make the wine, I think, complete. And if you've got something ready to go, you don't need to add anything. And what's the point of adding something that is not needed? But it's a fascinating process that I think is very subjective too. Some people prefer, a richer, more decadent style wine, depending on the process. But when you throw time into the equation, it's a whole nother gamut, that a lot of times people don't realize, again, how long it takes to make these wines and then what is exactly in front of them, that they're tasting. Because it's if you try a wine that's on lees for 10 years that has 6 grams per liter, it's very different than a wine that's been on lees for 10 years with 6 grams per liter. It's completely different expression. Very cool. Very cool. Maggie, you got something else for us?
I do. So 2 more questions for the entire panel. One from Vicky Carroll. Hi, Vicky. Very happy to know you're here. So to the panel, do you feel that you'll expand your Rhone variety sparkling production in upcoming vintages?
I know Shannon's answer.
I'm going to just kind of continue. If our club membership grows, like I said, this is something we just do for fun for the holidays and to have around for weddings and that kind of stuff. So as that grows, it'll grow a little bit. As far as what we do, as I mentioned before, it's just kind of whatever I feel like playing around with. I'm doing a sparkling rosé this year, and in probably the next couple of years, I want to do a sparkling Syrah. I've worked in Australia, and so I kind of want to throw a tribute to that.
Yeah, we're. Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
I would love to do. Mommy will let me. Because all the ultimate decisions go through her. But I would love to do a Roussanne. We grow Roussanne. That grape really lends itself to that profile, and I'd love to experiment and have.
Well, as you can probably tell, we're doing it pretty sporadically, so we're just doing it kind of as a nice kind of thing to have in the back corner, but it's not an ongoing program annually for us.
Yeah, for us, we started with a couple hundred cases, and we're up to 350, and this year we're going to be closer to 400. It seems like there has been a demand for sparkling in general, especially something odd and unique, and especially when our tasting rooms and our facilities are open for people to come and enjoy those wines, the sparklings. But we haven't even really put it out in the wholesale market. I think that there is some opportunity in that world for a Picpoul sparkling, just for the geek factor. But yeah, we're going to inch up, not try to turn it into the next Camus. That's not what it's about. It's just it's a little too complicated to turn it into the next Camus. Too much work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a rule at Charles that we put 3 bottles in the cellar for every one we take out, and I still don't understand how that works, but I realize that there are some bottles that grow legs and walk away, if you know what I mean. So I think that's something to think about. And again, the time commitment of making these wines and checking them and making sure that they're ushered along the way they should be is absolutely incredible. So I really appreciate you guys carrying the torch here and doing it the right way, which is really, really impressive to see. Maggie.
Evan, that's a solid segue. Another question for the panel. What's the market like for sparkling wine in the US? Philippe, you might be able to weigh in here also. And how does that compare to selling it direct in wine country like in Paso?
Well, I'll say the sparkling wine market in the US is definitely bubbly. There are some producers that had record years last year. And when I speak about our country, I think it's focusing on wines from the region of Champagne. My winery, our wines are heavily focused on the on-premise, which is restaurants. And so that was really difficult for us to reach the end user and the consumer and the wine lover. But I think what's incredible is that folks really want to enjoy something different, and they want to enjoy something that, they feel like they have a greater connection with. And nothing shows more connection than the love it takes to make bubbles. I don't think there's no other wine that I know of that takes the time and effort to make like this. And so I hope that, people are seeking out wines of this caliber, and they're seeking out different wines than the norm. I found that a lot of folks are interested in learning more, even though they're at home. So I hope maybe you guys can share if you guys have had some great success over the last year with sharing your bubbles with folks in the time of need, because there's that great quote: in victory and defeat, you deserve some bubbles, right? So yeah, I know these are all very small production, but I think, have you guys seen any requests or special demands for some bubbles over the years?
Yeah, I mean, at least for us, it's a situation. I mean, our sparkling is $60 a bottle, so it's not like it's $20 below what you see on the shelf for French champagne. So we're certainly competing with that. But from our situation, people are going to walk in and they're going to want to experience what Halter Ranch is about. They're going to want to experience what's behind me and the views from our tasting room. And they want to know why this wine that we have here is different. And so people are willing to buy that. And, they're willing to take it home too, because I feel like at least the people who come here feel an emotional connection with the property, and they don't have an emotional connection with a French champagne that they've maybe heard of,
Never
but
been to.
never been there.
Yeah.
So they might be willing, especially, if they're going to get a 20% discount as a wine club member, to say, look, it's about the same price. It's good too. I love it. I love both of them, but I've been to this place. I can tell this story to my friends when I enjoy it. So that's why I feel like we've seen a increase in sales as this brand has developed over 2 vintages worth, and we continue to make, not a lot more, but 50 to 100 cases more a year is 50 to 100 cases more a year at our size proportionally. Percentage wise, it's pretty good. So, I mean, that's our feeling behind it. But again, we're not going to try to, blow it up into a 20,000 case sparkling program. It's just, it's good fun stuff.
So I just went back to Sterling. I went back to your wine, man, and it just keeps erupting out of the glass. How much is this? I got to know how much this is.
About the same. So 55, and
okay.
Kind of like what you were saying, what Kevin says, it does take a lot of time. It's a lot of effort that goes into it, and probably part of the reason why we wouldn't necessarily blow this up is it's not something that we make money on. So it's just kind of for fun. We do a lot of dinners here at Cass. We have a big facility. We have an 8-room bed and breakfast, and so it's part of that entertainment value as well. And kind of like Kevin was saying, it's they want something to celebrate, want something to take home, but you want it to be part of where you were, and so that's something unique and fun.
And Shannon, how much is this bottle?
35. And
okay.
So yeah, my daughter thinks all sparkling should be $70 a bottle, as much effort into it.
I'm telling you, right? Let's go. Let's do it. Everybody.
We have found that it has been an increase, especially even this year. It was really strange. I sold more sparkling in the month of December than I had before. I thought I had plenty to get me through to like maybe a summer disgorgement, and then all of a sudden 20 were gone. And I was like, there's been nobody in the building. Like it went out via online, and which is wonderful. And I love that people even were doing virtual tastings just centered on our sparkling program and just getting sparkling wines. So now I've got more sparkling on the lees. On the riddling racks, and we've decided to do another disgorgement this spring.
Yeah, Sherman, what do we got here? Where are you guys at on this? Is it still for sale or no?
Yeah, no, we just disgorged this summer, and we haven't really pushed it out yet. I think, Tony, what is it? Is it 65 or 60? I can't even remember.
60.
60.
Yeah.
So I think what's really incredible to see is obviously the range, but I think we're all in the same mindset of that. There's so much time and effort that goes into this. It's incredible value regardless of the price point. And I think a lot of times people will ask and say, why is champagne so expensive? And it's like, well, look, you're making 2 wines essentially, and there's so many variables that could go wrong. And then you almost have to kind of forget about the bottle and come back to it, in many ways. So it really is incredible to see the range here, and more importantly, how unique these wines all are. So I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your precious gems and with me. And I look forward to coming and tasting with you guys in person when the time's right. And I promise I won't come empty-handed. You know what I mean? Yeah, very cool. Maggie, do you have one last question for us before we have to go, or Or are we
The
looking?
main question for the group that you guys just started to touch on is can folks buy these wines?
Yeah.
And the last specific question was for Shannon, wondering how you landed on Tannat. So if there's a short version of that story, we've got a couple minutes remaining, and then we can talk how people can buy.
So for the Tannat, I wanted to expand my program and include a red, pure red. And I had a lot in the cellar. And then I used sweetened Petit Manseng to build the bridge as the dosage for that one. So it's blackberries and huge tannic finish. I wanted something off the chain different. So.
I think I'm pretty sure you succeeded on that one, and I can't wait to try it. Awesome. So Maggie, maybe you can share in the chat where everyone can reach out to, or if you guys want to maybe share where everybody needs to go to find your wines. Shannon, we go to your website is the best way to reach you guys.
HortonWine.com. Yes.
Okay. Sherman, where do we find you guys?
Yeah, again, the website's the best spot. Thacher Winery. We spell it with just one T, so kind of confuses, throws everyone in the wrong direction. But THACHER, yes.
Oh.
Winery.com. So.
All right, Sterling. When I want to smell a bouquet of flowers in my glass, where do I go get this? Because it's not obvious that I can, get this. Where
Cask Wines with an S at the end.com, or better yet, come out to Paso, visit Sherman, Kevin, Maggie, and myself. All three of them are pretty close to each other. I'm just on the other side with a bed and breakfast, so come on out.
All right, Kevin. And
yeah, so we're located at halterranch.com. You can get it through here, and then there's one small little place in town over at that new Paso Market Walk. Julie Fisher's place. She has it in bottle over there. We gave it to her. She used to work for us, so she wanted something unique and interesting. So we sold her some. If you can't make it out here, you can grab it from her place. Otherwise, go to our website and grab it there.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And I can't wait to do a bubbles and karaoke Ranger party. I think that is definitely needs to be on the docket for 2022. Maggie, I'm going to let you take it from there.
I'm inviting myself to the karaoke party. Shannon, your presence is required. We just want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. Our incredible panel, Shannon, Sherman, Kevin, Sterling, thank you guys. Philippe, thank you. This was really, really fun. And for folks who joined us today, we hope that you can join us again. We want these to be fun and educational. Be on the lookout. Our next virtual experience will be next month in February. The focus will be Syrah, and it will be great. So until then, be well. Thank you, and open some sparkling tonight. Cheers, everybody.
Done.
Cheers, y'all.